There's a moment, frozen in my mind like a snapshot I never asked for, where I'm sitting at the end of a long, candlelit dining table, surrounded by people in silk and teeth-whitened grins, and I realize I'm not supposed to be there. Not because I wasn't invited, but because I'm not one of them. Never was. That moment? That was the last time I saw Elodie as my future. And the first time I saw myself as disposable. Let me rewind, not to the beginning of our relationship. That's irrelevant now. This story doesn't start with love. It starts with a dinner party. Her family hosted it to celebrate the merging of vision and legacy. That's how her father put it when he raised his glass to toast Marshall, the man Elodie's parents had been grooming her to end up with since she was probably still in braces. Marshall, with his polished charm, his vacant compliments, and a watch that cost more than my entire car. I was there because Elodie insisted. She said, "Just come. Please. Just be with me tonight." She squeezed my hand before we walked in. I should have known that was the goodbye. Everything about that night screamed replacement. The menu had dishes I couldn't pronounce. The wine was from a region I'd only heard mentioned in movies. The conversation revolved around international markets and acquisitions, while I sat there thinking about the $42 I had left in my account and whether I could stretch it to cover gas and groceries for the week. But none of that stung as much as what happened after dessert. I was outside on the balcony, needing air, when I overheard her parents speaking with Marshall just inside the glass doors. "She's always been drawn to projects," her mother said, with a laugh I'll never forget. "But she needs someone who can support her potential, not drain it." "She'll come around," Marshall replied, casual as if he was already measuring drapes for our apartment. "Girls like her always do." And Elodie, she was there. Silent. Listening. Not defending me. That's when I knew. I drove us home in silence. She didn't even reach for my hand. She stared out the window the whole time, like the city lights were more comforting than I was. 3 days later, she left a note. A note. "Joel, you've been my comfort, my safety net. But I have to be brave now. Please don't hate me for choosing the life I'm meant for." I read it standing in the kitchen, still wearing the same hoodie from the night before, with a chipped coffee mug in one hand and the silence of our apartment pressing down on me like a weighted blanket I never asked for. I didn't cry right away. Not that day. The tears came later, in ridiculous, humiliating ways. Like when I saw a jar of sun-dried tomatoes she used to love. Or when I found her bobby pin under my pillow. Or when the Spotify algorithm had the nerve to play a song she once danced to in my hoodie. I felt gutted. But not just by the breakup. By the fact that I had believed, so stupidly, that love was enough. It took everything in me not to reach out. Not to call. Not to show up with the sunflowers she used to pretend she didn't like but always smiled at. Instead, I disappeared. Quietly. Utterly. And I started again. Not out of confidence. But because rock bottom doesn't offer much in the way of scenery. And what happened over the next 2 years, the rise, the shift, the comeback, wasn't for her. It wasn't even for me. It was for the version of me she didn't believe in. The version I wasn't even sure existed. Until everything changed. And the best part? She saw it happen front row, with no backstage pass. The thing no one tells you about heartbreak is that it doesn't arrive all at once. It leaks in slowly. Like a faucet left slightly open. It drips into every corner of your life. It turns your apartment into a graveyard of objects you never noticed until they became reminders. A toothbrush. A cardigan on the back of a chair. An empty picture frame you didn't realize she took the photo out of. That's how the first month went. I didn't leave the apartment unless I had to. I ate out of takeout containers and slept on the couch because the bed felt haunted. Every morning, I'd check my phone even though I told myself I blocked her. I hadn't. Of course I hadn't. I was waiting for the apology that never came. And the worst part? I kept rehearsing what I'd say if she did call. I pictured it dozens of ways, me being cool, me being angry, me being indifferent. But all those scenarios ended the same way, her telling me she made a mistake, that she missed the life we had, that I wasn't just safe, I was home. None of it happened. Instead, her social media became a highlight reel of brunches, gala nights, and vacations. Her and Marshall in Paris. Her and Marshall wine tasting in Sonoma. Her and Marshall kissing in matching scarves like they were a Pinterest board. I would lie if I said I didn't stare at those photos longer than I should have. Not because I missed her, exactly. But because I was trying to find proof that she looked happier without me. I wanted to see some tiny hint of regret in her eyes. But she smiled in every shot. Radiant. Perfect. Untouchable. My friends tried to help. They told me to go out. They dragged me to bars. One of them even tried to set me up with a barista who was way too kind to be involved in any of this. But I couldn't do it. I felt hollow, like someone had scooped out all the best parts of me and left a wax figure behind. Then came the panic attacks. At first, I thought I was just having trouble breathing from stress. But one morning I collapsed in the shower, heart racing, chest tight, sobbing with no idea why. That was the day I called my older cousin Finn, the only person in my family who never treated me like a cautionary tale. He lived out in the woods, 2 hours from the city, in a crooked cabin with no TV and an ancient espresso machine that only worked when it felt like it. "Pack your stuff," he told me after hearing my voice crack. "Disappear for a while." And so I did. I left a note for my landlord, turned off my phone, and drove north with everything I owned in the back seat. No destination, just a numb urge to be somewhere else. Finn's place became my cocoon. He didn't ask questions. He handed me an axe and pointed to a stack of firewood. That was his therapy. Chop, sweat, repeat. He let me scream into the woods when I needed to. Let me sleep until noon, wake up at 3 a.m., and sit on the porch wrapped in a blanket like a ghost. He didn't judge. And slowly, the fog started to lift. I picked up my tools again, the same ones I had once hoped would launch my small furniture design business. At first, I made things for no one. A stool, a desk, a coat rack shaped like a tree branch. Then I posted one piece, just one, to a tiny online marketplace. It sold within 3 hours. I posted another. That sold too. And suddenly, I had something again. Not just a business. Not just money. But purpose. I hadn't felt that in over a year. 2 months became 6. 6 became 12. By the time I returned to the city, I was unrecognizable, not in the way movies portray it with makeovers and cool leather jackets, but in the way my shoulders didn't hunch anymore. In the way I stopped apologizing for existing. I had a workshop space, a website, and a waiting list of clients who wanted custom pieces. And no, it wasn't flashy, but it was mine. Then, out of nowhere, she appeared. It started with a DM. "Hey, is this really you?" I stared at her name for a full 5 minutes before I even opened it. "Elodie," she followed up. "I saw your work featured on a design blog. It's beautiful. You always had talent." I didn't respond. I couldn't. My hands were shaking. But that was just the beginning. Because a week later, she showed up in person. At my shop. At my door. With eyes that didn't sparkle like her Instagram filters. With lips that didn't smile right away. And the first words out of her mouth? I don't know what I was thinking. I wish I could say I slammed the door. I wish I could say I laughed in her face. But what I did next might shock you. When I saw her silhouette through the frosted glass of my workshop door, I honestly thought it was a client who had shown up without an appointment. I was busy smoothing the edges of a custom oak console, hands covered in sawdust, earbuds in, sweat on my brow. I barely glanced up as the door opened with a faint chime, but when I finally looked, really looked, my heart stuttered in a way I hadn't felt in months. It was her. Elodie. Same face, but different. Tired eyes. Less makeup. A tension in her shoulders she used to mock in others. She wasn't glowing. She wasn't made up for the cameras. She looked real and lost. She gave a soft, awkward wave. Like we were old high school acquaintances bumping into each other at the grocery store. Not ex-lovers who had once talked about baby names and dying side by side. "I was in the neighborhood," she said, I scanning the room as if unsure whether she was allowed to be impressed. "Your shop's beautiful." I stood there, unsure whether to offer her a seat or an exit. I could hear the whir of the sanders still humming in the corner. It was the only sound in the room until I finally managed. "What are you doing here?" She stepped closer, slowly, like she expected me to shatter if she moved too fast. "I saw your pieces online, and the article in that design magazine." I guess I was curious. I swallowed hard. Curious about what? Her lips twitched, not quite a smile. "About how you're doing. About you." I crossed my arms, not to look tough, but to keep from reaching for the workbench behind me, something solid to hold on to. "You could have texted." "I did," she said. "You didn't answer." "That's because I didn't know how," I replied honestly. I wasn't sure if I should say thank you or ask why now. She hesitated, and for a second, the sharp version of her peeked through, the version that could cut with just a glance. But it vanished as quickly as it came. "Because I've made mistakes. Big ones. And I didn't know how to fix them. But I've thought about you, Joel. More than you know." I didn't respond. I didn't trust myself to. So she kept going. "Marshall, things weren't what I thought they'd be." He was polished, yes. Respected, wealthy, reliable, everything my parents told me I needed. But he was cold, distant. He treated me like a piece of furniture he picked out of a catalog. Something decorative, something expensive, but not something he ever really saw. She sat on the stool near the workbench, the same one I used when carving finer details. I noticed her eyes resting on the framed photo above it, me and Finn, covered in wood stain, holding up a sign that said first big order shipped. I used to think you were too soft, she said. Too idealistic. Too romantic. And now I realize that was your strength. You cared. You felt. Marshall never did. I should have kicked her out then. Should have told her I wasn't a nostalgia to her. But something in me needed to hear her out, not because I missed her, but because part of me had been frozen since the day she left. This was heat. Maybe not comfort, but warmth that could melt that part of me back into motion. I'm not here to beg, she added, her voice suddenly quieter. I just wanted to see you. To see what I gave up. And I asked. The question fell from my mouth before I could stop it. She looked around the room again, eyes landing on the rows of carefully labeled tools, the stack of orders taped neatly on the wall, the subtle layer of purpose built into every corner. I gave up something real, she said. And that's when I finally saw it, not just her regret, but her fear. Because she hadn't come to reclaim anything. She came to confirm the thing she was terrified of, that I'd done fine without her. Better, even. And worse, that I was no longer the man who would have dropped everything if she said she still loved me. I could have told her about my new partner. About Ava, whose smile felt like morning light and who never made me feel like a project. But I didn't. Not yet. Instead, I nodded slowly and said, I hope you find what you're looking for. She looked like she wanted to say more, maybe even plead. But her pride wouldn't let her. So she stood, brushed off her coat, and said, You look happy. I am. She walked out then, into the cold. And I let her go without another word. But I wasn't done with her yet. Because what happened next, what I found out 2 weeks later, would turn everything upside down again. 2 weeks after she walked out of my shop, I thought that was the end of it. A quiet, almost cinematic moment of closure, her facing what she gave up, me watching her leave without chasing. It should have ended there. But of course, life never sticks to scripts. It twists, pulls, unravels. And just when you think you're breathing clean air again, it shoves you right back into the smoke. It started with a package. I assumed it was a tool shipment, maybe the custom planer blades I'd ordered a month back. But when I tore the tape off, I found a thin white envelope sitting on top of a stack of bubble wrap. No return address. My name handwritten on the front in pen I recognized instantly, Elodie's handwriting. I should have left it sealed. I should have thrown it away. But curiosity has a way of dressing itself up as closure, and I was still soft enough to let it in. Inside was a letter. Not an apology. Not even a clear message. It read more like a confession that never found its voice. Her words were scattered, emotional, contradictory. She wrote about how she felt numb even in silk sheets and designer apartments. How she envied the simplicity of the life we used to share, the late nights with grilled cheese, the impromptu dance sessions in the kitchen, the stupid arguments about whether or not the cat understood English. But what stopped me cold, what froze my hands and made me reread the page twice, was the line. There's something you never knew, and maybe I was never brave enough to tell you. That was it. No follow-up. No explanation. Just that single dangling sentence. I stared at it for hours. My mind raced through every possible meaning. Had she cheated on me before she left? Had she wanted to stay and been pressured to leave? Was she pregnant at some point? Did she lie about something deeper, something that rewired the whole timeline of our relationship? I couldn't let it go. And I couldn't call her. I'd already survived her once. I wasn't about to crawl back into her orbit. But something gnawed at me, something louder than closure, something uglier than heartbreak. So I did something I never thought I would. I reached out to someone from her old circle, Rachel. Rachel was one of Elodie's cousins, not close, not particularly warm, but we'd been cordial back then. She once helped us move a couch up 3 flights of stairs and made the kind of sarcastic remarks that made me like her instantly. I found her on Instagram, sent a short message, and told her I just needed to ask something. She agreed to meet me for coffee, more out of curiosity than kindness. We met at a small cafe near the water. She arrived late, sunglasses on, phone in hand, looking exactly like someone used to navigating drama. When I told her about the letter, about the line that haunted me, she sighed and leaned back. Joel, she said, I'm not supposed to say anything. But honestly, you deserved better from the start. That wasn't the answer I expected. I waited, letting the silence thicken. She looked around and then said something that hit me like a slap. Elodie didn't leave you for Marshall. She left because her parents gave her an ultimatum. My pulse kicked up. What kind of ultimatum? They told her if she didn't marry someone from their approved list, they'd cut her off. No inheritance. No trust fund. No support. I blinked. She could have told me. Rachel scoffed. You think she had the spine to defy them? She's always been torn between who she is and who they tell her to be. She didn't choose Marshall because she loved him. She chose him because they handed her a future and called it security. I sat back, stunned. All this time, I'd been feeding myself the story that I wasn't enough, that she had outgrown me, that I was just a placeholder until something better came along. But now, I wasn't so sure, and I didn't know if that made it better or worse. Rachel leaned in before she left. If you really want to know the full story, she said, you should talk to someone else. Someone closer. Ask her sister, Daphne. I remembered Daphne. Quiet. Observant. Always the one on the sidelines, watching her family spiral in and out of facades. She had once told me at a family barbecue that the best people get trampled in polished homes. I thought she was just being poetic. Now it sounded more like a warning I never heard. That night, I stared at Elodie's letter again, reread the final line, and finally understood something. The past wasn't done with me yet. And as much as I hated it, I had to dig. Not for her, for me. Because I needed the truth before I could finally bury the ghost of the woman I once loved. What I uncovered when I met Daphne would leave me speechless. Daphne wasn't easy to find. Elodie's younger sister had always kept a low profile. She wasn't the social media type, didn't post brunch selfies, didn't go live from wine tastings or share curated quotes about self-growth. But I remembered she worked at a small independent bookstore tucked between a record shop and a failing yoga studio on one of the quieter streets near the old part of town. I hadn't been there in years. In fact, I half expected it to be gone, gentrified into a juice bar or boutique candle store. But when I pulled up that Tuesday afternoon, it was still there, just as I remembered, ivy creeping up the brick walls, faded paperbacks in the display window, a wind chime made from rusted spoons swaying over the door. The bell jingled as I stepped inside. The smell of old books hit me first, warm, comforting, nostalgic. The kind of scent that slows time. Daphne was behind the counter, sorting a stack of hardcovers, her glasses perched halfway down her nose. She looked up, and for a moment, she just stared. Then, she quietly said, I wondered when you'd show up. That startled me. You did. She nodded. You're the only person who never asked questions when they mattered. I figured eventually you'd realize the silence was louder than you thought. I hadn't even spoken yet, and somehow I already felt small again. Like I was late to a truth everyone else already knew. I cleared my throat. Do you have a few minutes? Daphne gave a subtle nod, walked out from behind the counter, and motioned toward the back. We sat in a cramped corner room surrounded by floor-to-ceiling shelves. Dust floated in the sunlight like forgotten memories. She offered me tea. I declined. My hands were already shaking, and I didn't need anything to spill. I didn't bother with small talk. I pulled out the letter. She sent this, I said. There's a line in it that's been driving me insane. There's something you never knew, and I was never brave enough to tell you. Do you know what she meant? Daphne looked down at the envelope, then back at me. Her eyes, always sharper than Elodie's, softened. She leaned forward, elbows on her knees, as if steadying herself. She meant the pregnancy, she said. I froze. The silence between us went heavy. I blinked, sure I misheard. What? She got pregnant, Joel? Right before she left you. The world slowed. I heard the hum of a fluorescent light overhead. My mouth dried up. That's not possible. She would have told me. I mean, we always said if anything like that ever happened. She didn't plan it. She panicked. And then the pressure from our parents got worse. They told her that if she wanted to be part of the family legacy, the inheritance, the name, the status, she had to end things with you and do it fast. Clean. No attachments. I shook my head. No. Elodie isn't cruel. No, Daphne said quietly, but she's scared. And she's been trained her whole life to treat fear as strategy. So she made a choice. She ended things with you, booked a procedure, and told no one but me. My hands were trembling. Not in anger. Not in grief. In a strange, hollow ache I didn't know how to name. She aborted our child? I whispered. Daphne didn't answer right away. She told me she didn't want to trap you, that you were already struggling, and she didn't want to add more weight. But I don't think that was it. I think she was just terrified of disappointing everyone. of becoming her own person. I stood up too fast, knocking over a chair. My vision blurred. Why wouldn't she tell me? I asked, almost shouting now. Why didn't you tell me? Because I thought she would, Daphne said, standing too. And after she didn't, I figured you deserved peace more than you deserved the truth. But it wasn't peace, I said, voice breaking. It was just a different kind of wound. The room spun. My knees felt weak. I sank back down, trying to breathe, trying to be. My child, my maybe, was gone, and I never got to know. I know I have no right to ask, Daphne said carefully, but I think she wanted you to know. Finally. That's why she wrote that letter. I looked up, eyes burning. So what now? What do I do with this? Just carry it. Daphne didn't answer. She just rested a hand on my shoulder and whispered, You survived without knowing. You'll survive knowing. That's what you do, Joel. I left the bookstore in a fog. The world outside was too bright, too loud. I walked for hours with no direction, ending up on a bench by the river. I sat there watching the water roll by, wondering how many versions of my life had vanished without me noticing. And just when I thought I couldn't feel any more hollow, a text lit up on my phone. From an unknown number. I'm sorry. I need to see you one more time. Please. It was her. Elodie. But this time, I wasn't the same man she left behind. And she was about to find out just how much had changed. The message haunted me all night. I didn't respond, not at first. I just stared at the words on my phone until the screen dimmed itself into black. I wasn't ready. I didn't know if I'd ever be ready. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that unfinished letter, heard Daphne's voice in my head, and pictured a version of my life that had been erased before I even knew it existed. But the part that scared me the most, the part one hated to admit, was that I still needed answers. Not closure. Not revenge. Just something to keep the past from continuing to echo in the back of my skull. The next morning, I responded with just one word. When? She answered immediately. Today. 6 p.m. Our bench. Our bench. She meant the one near Pecan Grove Park. The one where we used to go when things felt heavy. When neither of us could afford therapy but needed to talk. When we were still just two kids trying to convince ourselves we had control over anything at all. I hadn't been there since the night she left. I didn't even know if it still had the initials we carved under the armrest. Part of me hoped it didn't. At 5:58 p.m., I parked and walked down the familiar gravel path. The park was quiet. Late summer sun hanging low, casting shadows through the trees. I saw her before she saw me. Elodie was sitting on the bench, alone, her hands folded tightly in her lap. She was wearing a black coat despite the warmth, and her hair was tied back in a way she never used to wear it. Her posture was different. No elegance. No performance. She looked like someone who had lost the script entirely. I sat down beside her without speaking. She didn't look at me right away. You came. You asked? A beat of silence. I wasn't sure if you would, she said. I wasn't sure either. Finally, she turned her head toward me. And for the first time since she walked out of my life, I saw something in her face I'd never seen before. Humility. Real, quiet, painful humility. Her eyes were swollen like she hadn't slept. Her voice barely above a whisper. I'm sorry, Joel. I nodded, letting the words settle. That's not enough. I know. She took a deep breath and let it out slowly. I need you to know that it wasn't about you. Not really. You were the only good thing I ever chose for myself. Then why did you leave? I asked, and this time, my voice cracked. Why didn't you tell me about the baby? Why did I have to find out from your sister? She looked down at her hands. Because I was ashamed. Because I was scared. Because I'd been told my whole life that emotions don't build futures, alliances do. That love is cute, but stability is essential. And when I found out I was pregnant, it was like the floor fell out from under me. I didn't trust myself to raise a child in a world that kept telling me I wasn't enough unless I fit into theirs. You should have told me, I said. You should have let me fight for us. You never gave me that chance. Tears welled in her eyes. I know, and I regret it every single day. The wind rustled the trees around us. Somewhere nearby, a couple laughed. It made the silence between us feel louder. I don't expect forgiveness, she continued. I don't even know what I expect, really. I just couldn't live another year without saying it to your face. I made the wrong choice. Marshall wasn't a person to build a life with. He was a position, a transaction. We lasted 7 months after the wedding. After that, it was just appearances and silence. I stared ahead, watching the horizon. So why now? Why come back now? She took a while to answer. Because I saw your success. Your business. The interviews. The people praising your work. And I realized, you became the man I always knew you could be. You didn't need their approval. You didn't need me. There was no bitterness in her tone. Just quiet awe. I think, she added, I came back to see if the version of you I buried was really gone. And he is. You've outgrown me. I didn't respond. I didn't have to. She reached into her bag and pulled out something. A small envelope. This is yours, she said. I wrote it the night I found out. I never mailed it. I couldn't. I kept it all this time, even after everything. I hesitated, then took it. The paper was worn, like it had been opened and refolded 100 times. I'll go now, she said, rising to her feet. I just needed to give that to you. It's not redemption, but maybe it's an ending. I looked up at her one last time. I hope you find peace, Elodie. She nodded, wiping her cheek, and walked away. No drama. No fanfare. Just the soft sound of footsteps on gravel. I stayed on the bench long after she left, holding the letter, unsure if I'd ever read it. Some wounds don't close with answers. But I had something better now, a life I built with my own hands. And someone new. Someone who deserved all the parts of me I used to give away for free. But fate wasn't finished yet. Because 2 days later, a stranger came into my shop. And what he said changed everything I thought I knew, again. It had only been 2 days since Elodie handed me that envelope. 2 days of it sitting unopened on my nightstand, taunting me like a ticking bomb made of paper. I couldn't bring myself to read it. I wanted to believe I was strong enough to face every buried memory, every unsaid word. But something about that letter terrified me more than anything she'd said face to face. It represented a version of the past I hadn't yet accepted. I told myself I'd read it when the time was right. The truth is, I didn't want to risk undoing all the healing I had clawed my way toward. Instead, I threw myself into work. That morning, I was in the back of the workshop finishing a walnut coffee table for a client who wanted something with character. I was smoothing out the edges, headphones in, covered in wood shavings, when I heard the front bell ring. Normally, I'd ignore it until I was done, but something made me pause. The bell chimed again, louder this time. Impatient. Sharp. I stepped out into the storefront, brushing the dust off my apron, expecting a walk-in customer, maybe a couple looking for a custom piece or someone wanting to commission something off a Pinterest board. But instead, it was one man. Mid-50s. Tall. Expensive wool coat despite the warm day. A face you'd describe as distinguished if you liked him or calculated if you didn't. He didn't smile when I approached. He just stared at me for a beat, like he was scanning a file in his head and comparing it to the real thing. Can I help you? I asked, already uneasy. You're Joel Hayworth, he said flatly. I nodded. That's me. He looked around the shop, his eyes landing on the framed article about my first gallery exhibit, then drifting to the shelves of completed orders and the sketches pinned to the wall. You've built quite the name for yourself, he said. Thanks. I replied slowly, still unsure who he was or why he was there. He stepped forward and extended a hand. Walter Dean, Marshall's father. The words hit like a slap. For a second, I actually laughed because it felt so absurd. But when I didn't shake his hand, he let it drop and continued, unfazed. I didn't come here to cause trouble, he said. I came because I need you to understand something about my son. I don't think I need anything from you, I said, or from anyone in your family. He ignored that. My son is not well. He's never been well. What he did to Elodie, what he's done to every woman who's ever gotten close to him, it's not just manipulation. It's pathology. I'm not interested in family drama, I said, already turning away. Whatever happened between them is their business. He raised his voice, sharp but not angry. You don't know what he did to her after she left you, do you? I stopped. He stepped closer. He isolated her, tracked her phone, cut her off from friends, even family. She thought she was escaping pressure from your relationship, but she ran straight into a prison. The version of Elodie you knew, the version who danced barefoot in the kitchen, that girl died in Marshall's house. I turned around, my throat tightening. Why are you telling me this? He sighed and pulled a folded paper from his coat pocket. Because she's trying to rebuild her life now, and I'm trying to clean up my son's messes before they get worse. I read the letter she wrote you. I told her to send it. I told her to tell you everything. That made my blood run cold. You've read her letter? I asked, stunned. How? She came to me after she left Marshall, he said. I'm not proud of what my family did to her. I'm not proud of how we treated you. But she didn't leave you because you weren't enough. She left you because we made her believe she didn't deserve to be with someone who was. I didn't speak. I couldn't. I felt like the ground had shifted under me again. He handed me the paper. Read the letter. Then decide if you want to shut the door forever. But don't do it based on what you think happened. Do it based on the truth. And with that, he turned and walked out, leaving behind the faint scent of cologne and a storm of confusion. I stood there for a long time, holding both the envelope Elodie had given me and the folded sheet Walter handed me. My hand shook as I finally opened hers. Inside was a letter that shattered every version of the past I had been clinging to. She wrote about the fear, yes, the pressure, the pregnancy. But more than that, she wrote about loving me in a way that scared her. Loving me in a way that felt unsafe, not because I ever hurt her, but because I saw her. The real her. Not the curated one her parents shaped. Not the trophy Marshall paraded. Just Elodie. I wish I had fought for us, she wrote. But I didn't know how to fight back then. I only knew how to obey. And you deserved more than a woman still learning how to be brave. I folded the letter slowly, like it was a living thing I needed to protect. And just when I thought I'd reached the end of this story, that I'd heard everything there was to hear, a voice behind me said, "She told me you might still be here." I turned, and there, standing in the doorway, was Ava. And the look in her eyes told me she had read the letter too. There are moments that feel like crossroads, but they don't come with signs or dramatic music. They come quietly. Like Ava standing in the doorway of my shop, holding that letter, not in anger, not in judgment, but with something far more unsettling. Calm understanding. I didn't move at first. I was still holding Elodie's letter, still reeling from everything that had just happened with Marshall's father. My brain scrambled for damage control, some rushed apology or explanation. But Ava didn't give me the chance. She just walked inside and closed the door behind her gently. "I read it," she said, holding up the other letter, the one Walter Dean had handed me. "He gave it to me before I came in. Said you might need someone to remind you who you are." Her voice was steady, but her eyes were tired. Not of me, but of wondering whether I'd still be hers after all this. "I'm not mad," she added. "I just need to know if there's anything left between you and her." It was the only question that mattered. The only one I hadn't asked myself since this whole thing began unraveling. I walked over to her, slow and deliberate, and placed both letters, Elodie's and Walter's, on the workbench. I stood with my hands on the wood, grounding myself. Then I turned to Ava. "There's something left, yes, I admit it. But it's not love. It's pain. It's the ghost of a life I thought I wanted before I understood what real love feels like. And real love is what I have with you." She didn't rush into my arms. She just stood there, watching my face, trying to read the truth in it. "Elodie will always be a chapter," I continued. "But you're the whole damn book, Ava. And I'm not about to rewrite it because of something I should have mourned long ago." A slow exhale left her lungs, and for the first time in days, I saw her shoulders relax. She crossed the room and reached for my hand, lacing her fingers with mine. "Then let's build our life," she said, "not one made of what-ifs, one made of choice." I kissed her forehead, and something inside me, some old, lingering shame, finally let go. In the weeks that followed, things settled like fresh snow. I returned the letters to a box in the back of my closet. Not to forget them, but to accept them. My past wasn't something to erase. It was the scaffolding that got me here. And here was pretty damn good. Ava and I moved in together that fall. She painted the walls while I built our furniture from scratch. Every table, every shelf, every stool in our home was made by hand, not just by me, but by us. Together. She insisted on helping even when she didn't know how. Said she wanted to put her fingerprints into the wood, so the future we were building felt like hers too. A few months later, I got a letter in the mail. No return address. Just a single sentence written on the inside of a folded card. "I'm happy for you. I really am. B." And somehow, I believed her. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because for the first time in years, I wasn't looking back anymore. I had a woman who saw me, who stayed. A business that mattered. A home full of warmth, not memory. Elodie once told me I was her safety net. But Ava? Ava made me believe I could fly. And the woman who chose stability? Well, she's still watching. But now, she watches from the cheap seats.